Are you a civil engineering or structural engineering student that is planning to go to a career fair? Well, in this special episode of the Structural Engineering channel, we're going to outline 7 points that you should be aware of and that you can leverage to be the best you can be at your next career fair and try to land that internship or full-time job in the civil or structural engineering field. Let's jump right into it. All right, so in this episode, Matt, you've had some experience as a structural engineer yourself, visiting career fairs on behalf of your company, and you've kind of seen firsthand, young students coming up to you and kind of the back and forth. So we thought it would be helpful for those students to do an episode focused around preparation for career fairs for future structural engineers. I think this will be helpful in two different ways. One, for the students that are attending the fairs, and also for those structural engineers out there that might want to share this with students or might even help you in preparing for attending a career fair. So, Matt, before we jump into this these 7 points that we have developed here as a framework for this, give us a little background on some of your experience with this for the audience.
Sure. So I've been going to career fairs on the other side, not the student anymore, but more on looking for interns or entry level people to come in for our company. So I've been doing that for the past year now, and it was really just interesting to see what it's like on the other side and kind of seeing what the common mistakes are and kind of what I guess some students don't get it, or they can improve a lot on some points. So for me, just seeing it from the other side, I think I have a lot more clarity on at least what I look for, and I think what students can look for, and what I would have done differently if I was still a student.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I think, exactly what we're hoping to do here is help you as a structural engineering student to prep for these career fairs. So, Matt, let's kind of walk through these kind of 7-point framework that you've kind of developed based on your experience, and hopefully we can help some people out with it. Now, the first one is to research the companies, I guess, ahead of time. Don't go into the fair blind.
Exactly. I think one of the good strategies, if you're going to a structural engineering career fair or civil engineering career fair, is target the companies that you want and do research on them. One of the worst things that you can do is just go up to a company and ask them, so who are you guys and what do you guys do? I mean, especially with this day and age, there's no excuse. You can literally just go to take a break and go on your phone and actually just Google those companies. But it's kind of just an instant red flag if a student just comes up to you and says, so who are you guys? And it kind of just shows that you don't have that initiative to even, you don't know anything about us, and you're just I don't know, kind of wasting time.
Right.
And it's completely different when actually the complete opposite of it is when a student goes up to you and says, hey, my company, DCI, they could just be like, hey, DCI, I read your website. I like the projects that you're working on. I heard you did some projects at our school. How's that like? I really want to work for you guys in the projects that you do. It's completely different, and so from one extreme to the other. So definitely just doing the research, it really gets you off on a first strong impression.
Yeah, and I think too, to Matt's point, I mean, just what you can try to do if you're a student going into one of these career fairs is to think about it from the other person's perspective a little bit if you can. I know that's not always easy to do. Matt's able to do it now because he's seen both sides of it. But just think about someone coming up to you and saying, can you tell us about your company, as opposed to saying, I see the projects your company's working on. I'm really excited and interested in working with your company. Think how that makes that person feel. And if they're trying to note for their company which engineers they should really follow up with or look at more closely, you can probably guess that they'll be looking at those that were interested in them a little bit more closely. So that's a great initial point. All right, number 2, Matt, is to have some type of story coming in, some clear goals and a plan, and really know what you want.
Yeah, it helps with, it's pretty much like an interview. Like if you think about it, if you're talking to at least me, I'm kind of like a filter for which resumes are good or which candidates are good. And it's kind of like a mini interview. So, so at least for me, if I know you have like a good story coming in terms of just like, hey, I wanted to do structural engineering. My dad was a structural engineer and he wanted to go into that, and that's how I got into it. Some type of framework on why you even want to go into structural engineering, and that you want to do structural engineering. It already shows you that you're a serious candidate and you're not just, oh, I'm not sure what I really want to do. Maybe I might stick around, maybe I don't. So just having a candidate that knows where they want to go, or at least are certain that they really want to try structural engineering and they think that it's a real possibility in their career, really makes a difference, because it even gives us a talking point to go off on. If you can't talk to me for a couple minutes, it already makes a kind of bad impression. But if you go in there kind of confidently, like saying, hey, I want to do structural engineering, this is how I got into it, and it kind of gives me more of a reason to see your why you want to go into it, why you're at least passionate or interested in it. It makes it a lot more, you present yourself a lot more credible and believable, and it just makes you a lot more personable, at least for me. So that's definitely something that you want to go into when you're going to go talk to someone at a career fair.
Yeah, I mean, it really shows them why you're interested in structural engineering beyond just, hey, structural engineering sounded cool, so I signed up for it, right? It's like
Yeah,
some
or
real,
I just need a job.
right,
It's like,
right. There's some real passion behind it and real interest in it, kind of a why behind it, like you said, Matt, their story. So I think that is a good way to set the tone. Number three was, the ability to be personable. Can they talk to the CEO? And you even mentioned the airport test, which I'm interested in hearing about.
yeah, sure. So, when we're hiring interns or entry levels, by default, you need to have the technical skills that every engineer needs in analysis. But if you think of it from our perspective, the employees are the ones that are recruiting people. We're going to be around you, working with you for 8 hours a day. So like, if you could be like the greatest technically, but if you're like non-personable and you're not good to get along with, that's kind of a deal breaker, because you're not just doing that to me, you're doing that to the whole team. And especially with a civil and structural, we're dealing with all sorts of teams and different types of people every day. So being personable, being likable. I know one of our employees kind of puts it like, how they present themselves in person. Are they like stuttering? Are they super nervous? Or can they actually just go up to someone, like let's just say our CEO, and can they talk to them personably? And are they likable? Do they sound confident in their abilities? Because at the end of the day, I think, at least for us, we're looking for potential leaders. And if you already have that ability to get along with everyone on the team, no matter what level they're at, then that's already a big indicator that you can fit in and hopefully become in a leadership position someday. And that's the same thing with the airport test, which what I personally do. I ask myself, hey, if I got stuck in the airport with this candidate, would I be okay with it? It wouldn't be like, if I'm stuck with them for 4 to 8 hours in an airport, are they fun to hang around with? They don't need to be fun, but are they like personable, likable? So that's kind of just another big test. So, going in there confident and, putting on a smile and just being a likable person, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think from the flip side of that, if you're a student listening to this saying, that's great, but I am nervous because I haven't done this before and I haven't had a lot of that kind of experience, my recommendations in terms of what you can do to improve that is, join a Toastmasters group. If you're not familiar with Toastmasters, it's a great nonprofit group that anyone can join to work on your public speaking skills. And often what that does is it helps you to work on your conversational skills and your confidence. So that can be a big boost in terms of exactly what Matt is saying, what someone might be looking for in terms of you being able to be personable or not be nervous in a situation. The other thing that you can do to help calm those nerves or become more comfortable in those situations is any kind of leadership type volunteering that you can do. So if you're in school, get involved in committees, boards, groups, and whether it's like a concrete canoe or different kinds of team functions or team activities, that will help you and make you more comfortable when you get out there in industry and start to talk with engineers that are practicing engineers. So, I know you might be listening to us saying, yeah, but that's hard for me to do. We understand that, and there are things that you can do. And in fact, Matt's spoken about this on other episodes of the podcast. I think the beginning episodes where we kind of talked about how Matt and I met and how he recently got involved in ASCE, which has helped him a lot with some of his kind of softer skills and things of that nature. So that's something that you could think about if you need help with that specific point.
Exactly. Just think of it as a skill. And same thing with me. I was very bad at first. That's something that I would have done. What if I was to go back? I would have brushed up on those skills to basically improve myself personally and be more presentable.
All right, Matt. So the next one is, how can you add value to a firm as a student?
So for me, this is kind of what the resume is for. When I'm looking through the resume, um, what I'm looking for as someone that's looking for new interns or entry levels is what have you done and what have you learned from those? So obviously, having an internship kind of shows that, hey, you've worked in the industry, and you've developed those analysis and those design skills in terms of knowing the code, knowing how to design beams, columns, or at least you're familiar with construction such as RFIs and what the whole process is. So that's the most obvious thing, but I know a lot of students coming in, they don't necessarily have that. So there's got to be some other way to kind of show those. And for me, what I like to see if someone doesn't have those internship experiences is uh, pretty much what you said, getting involved. Like, what have you done uh, besides going to class? Uh, have you, because if you're just going to class, I mean, you really can't stand out from anybody else. But if you get involved in such as like ASCE or Concrete Canoe, join competitions, or become becoming a board member on a civil engineering student organization, that
Sure.
shows leadership skills, that shows initiative, it shows you can work on a team. And if you're in a competition, it shows that you can obviously work on a team, but also do some analysis and design. So it's kind of translating those skills. That's the skills that I'm looking for. Can you work on a team, and can you analyze problems? And by going the extra mile and getting involved in those, that's another way that you can show that, hey, I do have the skills that I learned in seismic design competition, I can directly transfer to an internship. So it really is kind of just showing, going the extra mile and actually getting those skills, because those are the skills that you don't necessarily get at school.
But those are the ones that are going to, transmit value to a firm, which is, again, back to that main point, which is how are you giving value to the firm? Maybe it's through some of your code knowledge and experience, if you have that internship experience. If you don't, it's really just showing people, like Matt said, that you get out there and you get outside of your comfort zone and you volunteer and you get involved with organizations. I remember doing interviewing for the civil structural firm that I worked for years ago. And, I don't remember that often that we keyed into their academics or their GPA as much as we looked at their extracurricular activities. Because as Matt said, in the civil structural world, you really have to be able to communicate effectively. You really have to be able to talk to other people and work with teams and solve problems together. And so, yes, you need to do calculations as well, but you also need to do these other things. And I think firms are looking for people that are well-rounded, and that's something that's really important, and hopefully something that you can really take away from the episode here today. Now, Matt, transitioning into this next point, it goes a little bit back to what we just spoke about, which is code knowledge, design classes, design experience. I mean, like you said, that would be of value to these firms. And if it's something that a structural engineering student is listening to this episode saying, that would be great if I can build up some of those things when I go into these career fairs and show that I have knowledge on these codes. What do you recommend the best way for them to do that is?
So for me, I mean, I went to Cal Poly Pomona, which is a very hands-on school. I know not all schools are like that. A lot of schools are theoretical. Um, my suggestion is if your classes aren't doing that, well, if you do go first, if you do go to a design school, obviously emphasize that you can design things and you can analyze things per code. But if you don't go to a type of school like that where it's really theoretical, then again, I would try to find some way to get that type of experience. Best case is obviously getting an internship, but the next best thing is getting involved and doing some research on these uh, other competitions, or actually just helping out. I know some people that have done research with their professors, kind of like a research assistant, just getting more familiar with the codes and design. But even if you're not, I mean, try to do something that shows that you go the extra mile and that you can learn the codes if you really wanted to. So that's one thing that you could do. I know in the seismic design competition, um, we had to look at a whole bunch of different lateral systems and uh, why they were coded like that. I know there's a lot of competitions like that too. Like I know there's like a wood competition, a geotech competition, and I think precast beam competitions too. So there's a lot of ways that you can get involved and get more exposed to code and design.
Yeah, that's great. And I think also in terms of just to that end, organizations like ASCE with the Structural Engineering Institute that we mention often on the podcast, they have outlets like whether it's online articles or newsletters, or maybe you can find a magazine in your industry, right? Things that you can do to read about just to keep up to date on the industry, which would include like code updates and things of that nature. I mean, we've had some episodes where there's some new pre-standards for the performance-based design and things of that nature. Just knowing about those in a conversation at a career fair can tell people like, okay, this, he or she is keyed into the industry and they're kind of keeping up to date on things, which just tells me something about that person. So you don't have to become a code expert, but I think staying up to date on industry trends and just being aware that maybe there are code changes or things that are happening in the industry is going to go a long way for you. All right, Matt, next point. One thing to think about is, are you talking to an HR recruiter, a decision maker, a senior engineer, a principal? Talk about, the importance of that.
Sure. So one of the things that I found out when I was still a student and really increased my chances of getting an internship are knowing what companies are at the fair, and not just knowing what companies, how big are they? Because you have your giant firms that have thousands of people. And for those types of firms, usually there's going to be like an HR person that's probably not like really the person doing all the engineering. So that's where it's a little tougher to kind of, um, I guess, sell yourself, because I mean they're not the actual decision makers. Are probably going to have to go back to their HR department and vet it out even more. I think your chances, and the ones that I focused on when I went to a career fair, was the smaller companies, the mid-sized companies, where if I knew that the person I was talking to was either uh, a senior engineer that I would eventually be working with, or they sometimes even the principal was there. So it's pretty much having that interview right there. So in terms of me, I would scout those firms out, because that would increase my chances if I can make a good first impression um, to the actual decision makers. Then
Right.
that increased my chances a lot. That's how I actually got my second structural engineering internship, going to the smaller ones, talking directly to the engineer that I eventually worked with. And that, I think that's one way to increase your chances, because it's less competition. Everyone's trying to go to those big firms, but if you stick to the smaller and medium-sized firms, I think your chances increase a lot, especially if you don't have your first internships already under you. So for me, knowing who you're talking to, are you talking to an HR person, or are you talking to an actual decision maker that can actually say, hey, I like this person, let's bring him in. So that was my way of navigating through those fairs.
Yeah, I think a lot of times with these career fairs, you'll find that you can get access to a list of the companies that are going to be at the career fair beforehand. And sometimes you can even see the representatives from the companies that are going to be there. And as Matt mentioned earlier, with all of the tools available today, like LinkedIn or the company's website and their list of leadership or professionals, it's probably going to be pretty easy if you have a name of the person and the company name that you could do a little bit of research on them. And again, going into a career fair and saying, I see that you're a leader in the company. You've been there for 10 years. I value the opportunity to chat with you for a few minutes about the company. Again, that tells me that you took the time to do a little research on the company, on myself. And that, again, if I'm making a list when I go back to the office of people that I want to reach out to that I met at the career fair, you're going up higher on the list if you knew who I was and you were able to take some time to engage with me specifically. So don't kind of overlook those things. And the one thing I'll say about that too is there may be 100 companies at the career fair. I'm not telling you to research 100 companies and 100 people. Like Matt said earlier, pick out 5 or 10 or 12 or whatever the case may be and spend 5 to 10 minutes on each one. And by doing that and just talking to 10 people at the career fair, I guarantee you that the odds of you getting a job are going to go way higher up than if you just went there and randomly walked around and talked to 40 or 50 people that you didn't have any background
Yeah.
on. It's really a much better use of your time. And again, if you flip the switch and think about it from the other person's perspective, you can see why someone who you came up to and you mentioned their name and you mentioned their company's projects is going to, again, put you at a higher level than somebody else that may have just came up to them and handed them a resume and said, "Can you give me a job?" Basically.
Yeah, it's basically like, at least for me, I'm one of the people that are looking, vetting the people out. And again, you need, if I remember you and the things that I just said, like, hey, if you know our company and you have a good story on why you want to do this, and you have a good resume and you're good to talk to, you're definitely going to stand out, even if you don't have like a lot of internships or no internships. I can kind of just see the potential. I mean, we'll teach you the other engineering stuff that you need to know, but if you're memorable by doing all these things that we've listed, it really increases your chances.
All right. And for the seventh and final point here in terms of preparing for a structural engineering career fair, I'm going to just one that I tacked on myself, which is, be yourself. I mean, we're telling you all these things to do, and I think a lot of them are important, but at the same time, you don't want to show up to a career fair and try to, be someone you're not, try to talk over your head if you're not comfortable with certain concepts. So while I think it's very important to do the things that we said and preparing and doing your research, if you're someone that has a sense of humor a little bit, use it. If you're someone that has a certain skill or a talent, use it. Because I think sometimes too, when we try to be someone that we're not, the nerves can kick in extra high and can kind of stutter and, make it even more difficult to do some of the things that we've talked about. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've had
like if you
experience
don't
with
know
that, Matt.
anything, don't try to be like, yeah,
Exactly.
I know about that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know still, and it's just a lot easier to be like, oh, you know what? I haven't heard about that. What is that? Like being curious too, like stuff like
Exactly.
that, kind of just being genuine.
All right. So there you have it. These are 7 points that hopefully you can focus on in preparing for your structural engineering career fair. I'm going to run through them real quickly. Number 1, research the companies. Don't go in blind. Number 2, have some kind of story about yourself coming in and why you're interested in structural engineering, as opposed to just saying, I heard about it and I liked it. Number 3, be personable with the person at the career fair if you can, make small talk. And if that's something you're not comfortable with, you can join a Toastmasters to try to develop those conversational skills. Number 4, think about how you can add value for that firm and try to transmit that to them in your conversations. Number 5, code knowledge, design class experience, anything that you can do related to design or codes that you can brush up on beforehand, whether that's staying up to date with industry trends or whatever the case may be, that can help you to come off as someone who's more polished and more aware of the industry. Number 6, know who you're talking to, possibly ahead of time if you can, whether it's an HR recruiter, a decision maker, a principal in the firm. This way you can be prepared to have those conversations with those people. And last but not least, be yourself. Don't try to, do something that you can't. Don't try to say something or guess at something if you're not sure if it's the right answer, so to speak. And if you do those things, I think you're going to set yourself up for some success at these career fairs. Matt, did I hit everything there?
Yep, that sounds good.
I hope you enjoyed the episode for today, and I ask you sincerely that if you know of a structural engineering student, or maybe it's one of your professors or a department, and you can share this episode with them in any way, shape, or form, please do that. And the reason is because I know, and as engineers, sometimes that internship that you get from a career fair launches your engineering career. and it sets you up for success in the future. And so we're hoping that by sharing some of these tactics and strategies with students, it will increase their chances of finding that structural engineering or civil engineering internship for that matter, and really launching their careers. Once again, I hope you enjoyed this one. We'd love to hear your feedback, comments, and/or questions. Please visit the structuralengineeringchannel.com, where you will find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during the episode. And don't forget to check out our Engineering Management Accelerator online workshop at Engineer to Manager. That's engineertomanager.com. Until next time, we wish you all the best in your structural engineering endeavors.